Hi, this is Erica Goodrich, and I am presenting a subject guide created for a Legal Research Basics workshop, which is designed for first-year law students at the University of Miami School of Law. This guide will introduce students to essential primary and secondary legal resources that are used in legal research. It also introduces students to validation codes for print sources and citation services in Lexis and Westlaw. In creating this guide, I took a constructivist approach, and that is, I wanted to draw on students' prior knowledge and use it as a basis in which to construct the main tenets of the legal research process. So to begin, I created a Start Here tab rather than a Home tab, since I am really trying to establish this idea of legal research as a step-by-step process. I wanted to make a point on where students should start. On the Start Here tab, I included a basic outline of what will be covered in the guide. I also included a brief overview of the three main steps in the legal research process. I also included my contact information, as well as a student survey. And in session, I would highly encourage students to utilize these. Tab 2, Secondary Sources, is the first step of the legal research process. In my experience, students tend to start with primary sources, so I wanted to order secondary sources before primary sources to get students in the habit of starting with secondary sources. Here I provide an overview of what secondary legal resources are, their applicability, and what will be covered on the tab. I also make a note of saying that the resources covered in this tab are not comprehensive, and the reason being I want students to know that there are other secondary legal resources to consult. However, the two taught in this instruction are really great places for them to start. As we scroll down the page, I include separate boxes for each category, the legal encyclopedias and legal treatises. Each box contains a description and application of the resource, and I also include hyperlinks where appropriate. At this point in an instruction, I would include an activity for students to open Lexis or Westlaw and have them find an analysis on a legal issue using one of the encyclopedias. Ideally, I would also bring a copy of Ideally, I would bring a print copy of the encyclopedias to the instruction. Ultimately, if students are unfamiliar with finding an encyclopedia entry using an online database, locating one can really become cumbersome. Therefore, I found this as a great opportunity to teach students that, in this case, a print copy may be preferable over an electronic copy. Essentially, it's easier to see the structure and organization of the entry in print. Finally, on this tab, my contact information, database search tips, and a student survey. Tab 3, Primary Sources, is the second step in the legal research process. Again, I begin with a brief overview of what primary sources are and their applicability. I also include a visual of the process of primary authority. Just like the secondary legal resources, there are many primary sources. For students' convenience, I hyperlinked where appropriate. Further down the page, I include instructions on locating primary source items at the law library with hyperlinks. And another box with two online databases, FDsys and Thomas.gov, which provide free access to primary legal documents. And finally, my contact information, a rule of thumb, and a student survey. The last tab reviews resources for validation. This is the final step in the legal research process. Keeping uniformity, I include what validation codes are and their applicability. In the middle column, I include citation services in Lexis and Westlaw, what they are, why they are important, and the codes themselves. I also included YouTube tutorials of each of the databases. And these tutorials are created by Lexis and Westlaw, and they provide in-depth coverage of the validation services. On the left-hand side, I have some additional information on the importance of the validation codes, as well as validation codes for print sources. And finally, I have a student survey. In closing, I just want to note why I decided to include a survey on each page. And mainly, I feel feedback is perhaps the most important aspect of an instructional session. I created this guide based on what the law librarians have discussed and information I gleaned from other subject guides and presentations. However, the most valuable data for creating a useful guide is feedback from my students, hence the survey on each page. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.